day 2 of our 1-point perspective landscape project. We're using the same supplies, pencil, ruler, and colored pencils. You should have already created your horizon line. Going on our rubric, remember you should have a 1-point perspective road. I've slowed it down so you can see it a little bit slower. It's basically just creating a triangle. You don't have to have fences. Remember, you are creating your own story. My drawing is my story with my part. You have to figure out what your story is. I slowed down the fences because some people were asking how to create fences because they wanted to add them to their picture. I basically do the same things I did for the road, and I make that triangle shape, and then I start to create vertical lines so that I have smaller vertical lines closer to the vanishing point on my 1-point perspective dot. And then as I move closer to the end of my road, which would be at the very bottom of your paper, I make my lines bigger. This would be a similar way for you if you wanted to make one of the bigger fences, or if you wanted to create houses where you were seeing the front of the house. Do remember, you don't have to have a fence. It's your story, not my story, your story. It has to have, go on that rubric, if you look at it, the 1-point perspective road, something in the background that represents you, something in the midground, and something in the foreground. It is your choice where you place you. My suggestion on creating your self-portrait, I would put you in the foreground or maybe the midground, okay? That way we can actually tell who is who, okay? Okay, going over how to create a portrait. Whenever I create a portrait, I always start with the bottom half of the face, and that's basically a letter U most of the time that I do, or you can make it more of a triangle shape, really your preference. Then I go in with the eyes, making some circles, and then when I do the eyes, I want to make sure that I have the color part of the eye, the black part of the eye. That means the iris and the pupil, and then getting a little bit of reflection. The nose, I keep really simple. It's mostly the letter C or an arrow. The lips, most of the time it's just a line. It could be like a smiley face, letter U line. It's up to you if you want to add more details. Do remember, when you create your hair is really what demonstrates it's you. Because if we're doing a self-portrait and we want it to look like you, if you have short hair, well, then you should have short hair in your picture. If you have long hair, then you should have long hair in your picture. Think about what you look like. When I was creating my clothes, I was thinking about the story I was telling. Because remember, we said your landscape should tell a story. And if I'm walking my dogs in the park, most of the time I'm going to wear a t-shirt and shorts because it's Texas and it's hot. So I start to create my t-shirt. Most of the time the shapes that I make for shirts are trapezoids. And think about, if it's windy outside, you might want to make the clothing where it has a little bit more wavy lines. If you're wanting it to be more straight, you can do vertical and horizontal lines. Really your choice. When I do the arms, I'm creating them at an angle, kind of like the letter L. And then I'm thinking about my hands. Are they going to be holding something? Since I'm walking my dogs and that's part of my story, I put the leashes in my hands, and since I have leashes in my hands, my hand is closed, so you don't see as much of my fingers in there. And if I'm looking at it perspective-wise, I'm not looking for the other arm, so I'm just seeing half of me because it's a side view, it's in profile. I think about how I'm adding my clothing, and then also how I'm going to be walking. So when I start doing my shorts, I want them to be at an angle. So I'm adding them where I'm creating a letter V so that I can get my pockets and what my shorts look like. Once I have that done, then I'm just adding different things that are going to tell to my story, like my sidewalk. the pond, my puppies, and what they look like. Remember, you don't have to make it in the park. It's your story. If you want to make it you at school, you could do that. If you want to make it you walking to an ice cream shop or McDonald's, you could do that. Remember, it's where you want it to be. I had one person saying it was going to be at their grandma's house. I had another person saying that they're putting it in front of their house. So the more you can relate it to you, the more you will enjoy it. Alright, tips for coloring in. Whenever I'm coloring in, I'm first thinking about what my colors are going to be, especially on the portrait. Remember, the portrait should look like you. Think about what your hair color is, what your eye color is, what your skin tone is. What kind of clothes do you like to wear? So when you're making your clothing, it should be looking like something that you would normally wear. When I added my dogs, I made them look like my dogs. I put the colors that my dogs are and the leash colors that they have. So try to think about what colors you're picking. Another tip for color pencils is to tilt your color pencil at the side. If you're tilting it at the side, it's going to allow you to cover more ground more quickly as you're coloring in. If you vary your pressure and press down harder where you want to have thicker lines, it's going to allow you to make more detail lines. This can also help with creating movement as you're coloring in. When I was doing the grass, I was thinking about how I was creating my lines to create some motion in how the grass is. When we look at the definition of movement, it is the path the viewer's eye takes through the picture. And how you're coloring in can help with your one-point perspective, creating movement to that vanishing point.